Welcome to another ICS Village production. The ICS Village is a non-profit organization dedicated to the promotion of industrial control system security. Visit our website at icsvillage.com to discover more about us, where to find the village, participate in our community engagement project, and how to sponsor and donate to the ICS Village efforts.
Gotta put my glasses on because I'm old. All right, good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. God, that's horrible. So I can see far okay, but up close it's a little more difficult. Well, welcome. First of all, obviously, I'm Cutaway, Don C. Weber. I'm going to be talking about why aren't you automating? All right, this is a basic. I'm not going to be getting into. Yes, it's the ICS Village. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the talk and supporting the village. I really appreciate it. I'm just going to talk about some basic concepts. I'm not going to get into hacking PLCs, RTUs, control environments. Okay. The thing that I wanted to talk about is, first of all, this is DEF CON, right? It's not a security summit. It's about hacking stuff. It's about taking the things that are out there and taking advantage of them where they can, okay? And doing things that they wouldn't normally do, all right? So I'm gonna talk about some of the stuff that I do just on a day-to-day basis. The reason why I wanna talk about automating is that there's a lot of people out there in the industry that need to do a bunch of stuff, right? They need to do asset management. They need to do enumeration to identify their attack surface. They need to do administration a lot better, right? And so they're turning to people that they're looking for solutions that are the silver bullet that will gather all that information for them. They are the people that I have known that are implementing control environments are really smart. They're really smart about the control environments. They're really smart about setting up networks, configuring things. But when it comes to administration of those things outside of making it work for the process, they get the process working and they just let it go, right? And now people are, and it works. It's doing what it's supposed to be doing, but people are asking them to do more and more stuff. And they're concerned about that. Sometimes they achieve it, sometimes they don't. They look to other people that they might not trust to do it. They might start looking to the solutions, and deploying the solutions, which adds more complexity to their things. And in the meantime, while they are designing and configuring or acquiring, designing, deploying these solutions, people are asking them for information. Right? They still want that stuff while these other things are being put in place to make the job better, to automate a little bit more. So I just wanted to talk about some of the simple concepts that I use to try to help people do these things, to kind of help. It's more about a methodology, a mentality approach. So I'm going to talk a few things and we'll go from there. All right, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Don C. Weber, and I go by Cutaway, as I mentioned before. The last time I spoke here was 10 years ago. I did a talk called Looking into the Eye of the Meter. I was able to do some security research on smart meters, advanced metering infrastructure. I learned how to pull them apart. I learned how to work with hardware components, radios, and so forth. And my presentation was just how I leverage those skills to understand smart meters a little bit better, to gain access to certain things. It was more of a skill thing rather than vulnerability disclosure. And I prefer to talk about skills, right? I prefer to talk about that. So that's what I did. But I do this for a living. Just wanted to put that out there so that you understood, why I'm here. Okay. So we're going to talk about what is automation, and then how do you start automation? And I'm going to have a few examples, demo gods, right? So we're just going to switch over to Windows VM, and because most of the things we do in these environments are Windows, all right? So we're going to do that. So what are we talking about here? Oh, and by the way, This is y'all's time. So if you have a question in the middle, stop me, right? If you want to know about experiences, if you have a comment about something, we want to hear about it, okay? So I like to have a conversation. So if you have a question, heck, if you just want me to stand up here and start answering your questions, I will do that because this is your time, okay? But we're going to use this as kind of like an agenda to move forward in a common direction, okay? So what is automation? If you don't understand that, it's basically something that something that consistently repeats a task. Computers are really good at doing repetitive things over and over and over again. Human beings are okay at it, okay? But computers let us do a lot faster, okay? And a lot more consistently, okay? So that's why we do it. Now, what is automation, all right? I have a simple example here from a Linux command, right? If you want to get a listing from a directory, you can do an ls, okay? If you're trying to monitor for a change, though, there are techniques to monitor that for that change. And that's what the second example is there. So the watch.ls-al is basically just saying, hey, give me a listing of that directory, show me all of the attributes, so the permissions and the configuration of those files, okay, and do it, use the watch command. So every 2 seconds, run that command again, and show me the output, show me the output, show me the output. That is automation, okay? Computers are here to assist us with that, okay? So, how do you start automating? So I'm going to demonstrate, we'll have some demonstrations of how, some of the techniques that I use to gather information first, and then some of what I think about it, okay? So first of all, you need to practice, right? If you're going to be doing these things within your organization, if you are as a part of an administrative team within a control environment, you need to practice these things. You need to practice gathering information, and that's what we're going to give you some examples of that, right? I do this all the time, but I still code. I don't know all the commands. Well, I know a lot of things through experience. Most of the time, I'm just going out to Google. I'm a Google monster, I'm a Google hound. Stack Overflow, I am copying and pasting everybody's code. And I'm about to show you some code that I just grabbed from somebody else. And then I modified it to my advantage, okay? To automate the process so that I didn't have to repeat it over and over again so that I could be consistent, okay? So what are some examples? Well, in Linux, listing a directory, we use the ls command, okay? But in Windows, if you're familiar with Windows, you would use the dir command. But if we're doing it in PowerShell, okay? If we're doing it in PowerShell, what is that command? So I can do an ls in PowerShell. And that's because PowerShell has been configured to allow me to use Linux-like commands. Most of us are familiar with, if you're familiar with the command environment, of just doing a dir to get that listing. But what is that actually, right? So I didn't understand this before, but now you can go out, and I just Googled, like, writing this. How do I understand what that, I know it's an alias, so how do I understand what that alias is, okay? So I went out to Google and I found out that, to get the aliases within PowerShell, you use the get aliases commandlet for the command. So ls is an alias for the get child item, okay? So if I ran a get child item, I'm gonna get the same thing, all right? Now I start learning about what information is coming back and how I can manage that, okay? I've got some handy commands. Hang on just a second. All right, so how can I use that to my advantage? Well, let's go ahead, let's do that same thing that I was talking about before. I wanted to do the ls, I wanted to ls-al, I wanted to see if there's any changes, monitor it for a while, okay? But there is no watch command. There is no watch command in Windows. So let's clear watch ls, okay? When you see red in PowerShell, it's not that it's bad, it's just that you didn't do it correctly, right? But now, so what I did is I just went out and I just Googled, what is the watch command in Windows? Well, they said there is no watch command. But what you can do is you can do a while loop. While 1, so in other words, while 1 is true, while 1 equals 1 is basically what it's saying, run this command. I'm going to clear the screen. I'm going to run the get child command. All right? I'm also going to give it a path. I wanted to see it in the C directory. And then I want to sleep for 5 seconds. Right? Actually, it's 2 in the watch command, but I'm picking 5 here. Now when I run this command, it'll run it. And then every 5 seconds, it'll clear the screen and run it again. So this is my watch command. All right? Is this useful? Okay, it might be if you're trying to do something, right? The point I'm trying to make is that automation, learning how to do these things, repetitive tasks. Okay. So, like I said, I didn't write this code. I went out to Google and I found it. I stole it. Okay, how can this be useful? All right, I actually use these concepts in one of my scripts. Okay, and I'll point you to my code repositories at the end. But basically, I went out and I decided that hey, I want to I was writing scripts to help with incident response, gather information from a system, and so that it was repeatable, obviously. But there are certain things, certain volatile information on a system that provides you an understanding of what occurred. Okay, one of those things are the prefetch files in a Windows system, meaning that the prefetch files are files that are information about a program that was run, so that if it was run again, the Windows operating system can quickly access that information. So I want to run a dir command, and I want to gather all of the information about prefetch. So I looked up where the prefetch was. So I've got the prefetch directory right here. Okay, so system drive Windows prefetch, and then I'm just going to use the dir command, but I'm going to leverage a loop to go through this. I stole this code from Stack Overflow, and now when I go and run this, okay, so what I did is, in this case, I created a function, all right, a function called getPrefetch, all right? I learned that online. And now when I run that function, it lists out all of the prefetch files, okay? Actually, where I learned how to do the function bit was, and it's a great resource. So if you want to learn a lot more about PowerShell scripting, automation, go look at the PowerSploit tools. I mean, you want to talk about some very well-written PowerShell scripts. They've done an excellent job. It can be intimidating because they use a lot of advanced techniques. At the same time, anytime I want to do something like gather something from a registry, list the attributes of file, okay? I go see how they were doing it so that I know how to do it correctly and I know how to automate it, okay? So just a quick example of that. So now, what do I have? Okay, I can run this every single time. I can just keep this off. I can copy and paste this into a OneNote or into a text file. And anytime I want to figure out what all the prefetch files are, now I can put this into a script. And actually, that's one of the things that I did. Okay. The point that I'm trying to make is that within the control environment, people are used to doing, implementing things, all right? But they're not necessarily used to gathering information the way that we're hoping for asset management, or listing out doing incident response on systems on some type of HMI that's standalone in the middle of nowhere, all right? You don't want people typing this whole command to get this one thing by themselves. They can do it, but they're going to make mistakes. And if it's actual an incident response, there's going to be a lot of stress on that. Okay? And they're actually probably going to be going from system to system to system. So what we want to do is we want to provide them the techniques to automate all of these things. Okay? Now you can go buy a product, you can purchase a solution, you can have Maniac come in, you can have Dragos come in, and they'll have scripts already set up. Or if you need to gather information and send that to them to make it a little bit cheaper, or just to do your own internal information gathering to determine whether or not you have an issue, your team understanding how to automate is important. Understanding where to go and get that information. And that gets me back to the practice. You have to practice this stuff. Okay? And if this is a part of your job and you want to find a way to make the solutions a little bit cheaper, or so that you are gathering information while somebody else in your team is figuring out how to deploy some of these solutions, this is how you're going to do it. All right? So what are some other examples? All right? Well, in our control environments, well, hopefully in your corporate environments you've gotten rid of SMBv1. Hopefully. Right? But guess what you have in your control environments? Well, SMBv1, right? Which means that they're vulnerable to Eternal Blue exploits, remote code execution that provides them administrative level access. Okay? But if you have a standalone solution, typically you don't need SMBv1 on there. So how do you know whether a system whether it's been disabled or enabled? Well, we Google it. There are certain commands that allow us to gather this information. Okay? So the get SMB server config command, when we run that, we get a lot about information back from the system about the SMB configuration. But what is it? Where is it? It is, there we go. Enable SMBv1 protocol. True. So now I know it's true. Okay? Now I know. But how do I get better at that? Okay? Well, I learned how to use PowerShell to select the specific item. All right? So now I'm asking it, hey, go out and run the commandlet get SMB server config, but only select the enable SMB protocol. And now it's true. All right? So now I know it's true. I don't have all of that extra information. There are other ways to do it. So if you went out and Googled how to do it, you'd see if there are different techniques that PowerShell can use. One might provide more information than the other. Okay? So this is actually a little bit more straightforward. This is the Windows optional features. And in order to get the information about SMBv1 protocol, you have to give this command line options. But now we can see the state is enabled, right? In my mind, that's a little bit more straightforward, a little bit easier to understand. Rather than true, what does true mean? Okay, this says that it's enabled. All right, great. So how do I gather that information? Well, stole somebody's code. And now all this is I'm going to take that information and put it into a variable called SMB state. Okay? And then I'm going to use the write output command in PowerShell. Okay? And I'm going to say SMBv1 is currently enabled. Okay? I'm not running a script right now, but all I have to do now is copy this code into a script, into a text file, name it .ps1, and now I always have this. I have this automated. I can save this off. I can give it to my other team members that need to go run it on a different system. Or I save it off for myself so that when I'm doing an assessment or gathering information, now I can just say, hey, if you're okay with running this script, we can review it line by line if you like, but if you're okay with running this script, we can gather some quick information about your system so that we can identify and prioritize some of our efforts. Okay? Getting back to that automation aspect. Do you have to buy a tool to understand this vulnerability within your system? Now you don't, no. Okay? You might be able to detect this using network scans, but in our industry, we don't like network scans, right? So we probably should fall back to some scripts to help us gather that information. Okay? Are we still running something on our system? Yes. All right. Perhaps you need to practice this within on a test system. But once you have that information, now you can start, like I said, understanding issues within your environment, prioritizing them, and reducing the issues. You can actually take this command right here. It's very easy to modify this to change the setting of SMBV1. Okay? And that would just be a matter of, I'm going to tell you, Googling it, right? But you can make a script that does that, right? I would actually make a separate script, one for gathering information, one for changing settings, right? But you can make a script that you can go out and say, hey, run this script on every one of my HMI, my standalone HMIs that I know don't need the SMB service, and disable SMBV1. And now you've significantly reduced the risk within your environment. Use the tools that are out there. Okay? Other things, just giving more examples, okay? I was gonna do like a get when event, but I decided to, probably something that would be a little bit easier is understanding what was the last time people logged in, right? So there is a command called the get AD user, okay? I'm not, so if I wanted to understand everybody within an Active Directory domain, if I wanted to know the last time those people logged into a system, I went out to Stack Overflow and got this command right here. All right, but I'm not connected to a domain. All right, so I've got an issue. But can I get this same information from the local system? Okay, if I've got a standalone server that's not connected to a domain, people still have to log in. If they're logging in direct, that's one thing. If they're logging in remotely, that's another thing. So can I gather that information? Do I expect the administrative user to log in? If I don't, but I can see that they logged in recently, then that might be an issue. Okay? So I was like, as I was writing this, I was like, okay, I'm not on Active Directory. So how do I get the local users? Well, I Googled it, and I realized that there is a command, get local user. So when we run that command, this gives us all the information about the administrator, about the default user, so you can see the list of users, and they're enabled, okay? But that doesn't give me the last logon information. Well, if you're familiar with PowerShell, and you've done your research, and you've learned about it, you realize that you can use a GM command. Well, GM is an alias, so let's do it to get alias. GM. So get member, GM is an alias for get member. But what that does for me, so let's clear that. What that does for me is if I pipe a commandlet to the get member, okay, this is going to give me all of the information about that command. Okay, and we can see all of the different properties that are associated with the information from that command, and we can see that there's the last login property. Okay? So now, because I understood that, now I can say I can run the get local user command, and I can pipe that to the select object and get all of the properties. And now, as we can see, and it's a little bit hard to read, it's actually a little bit hard to process this way, okay? But we can see that I've got the information for every account. Okay, so we have the account administrator, it's a local user, and then the last login hasn't been a login for the administrator. But we can go down and we should be able to find the default user. There was a last login time. So excellent information. But I want to highlight certain information. If I'm going to script things up, I only want that last log on. Okay? So through my research online, like how to do this, came up with and I need the PowerShell is awesome. Did you notice that? Notice the how this changes from red to white. It's telling me that this command won't run. Okay? But this command should run. And now we see that for every user, what it does is it goes through and it gets the property, the last login. All right? So we know at least 2 accounts. Well, but what users are those? No idea. So I did that wrong. Okay? I do a lot of stuff wrong. Trust me. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I need to print out additional information. So get local user, select property, SID, name, and last login. So now I have the SID, the usernames, and the last login times. Okay, you can actually notice how it's the ... You can do other tricks. Not auto size. It's width. I'm entering dangerous territory. I'm trying to remember how to do this. All right, so I'm not doing it correctly. Maybe that'll get it. Okay, it didn't. But there are techniques that you can use to print all of that out. We just have to Google it real quick. I missed that, obviously. Okay, but now, what do we just do? Now we have the information about the local user accounts on this. We can tell the last time they logged in, and we have this volatile information that can help us understand what happened on these systems. And we're talking about standalone systems in remote environments. This might be important data. Okay, so understanding how to gather this and print it out correctly, automating it so that we remember how to do it, and putting it in a script so that we can do it consistently, that's important, right? So I did all of these techniques, and I just come up with scripts and I put them out on GitHub. Right? There's a few out there. The first one, NERC assessment scripts. So if you're at a utility that's responsible for gathering information from your systems, because it's associated with NERC requirements, okay? You have to automate some of this stuff. You have to figure out how to go out and gather information from these systems so that you're doing asset management correctly, so that you know when there's configuration changes. You have to self-report on some of these things. Okay? But as Windows changes, as PowerShell changes, as we know, some of the WMIC capabilities for Windows 11 are going away. So now, even if you've automated this before, or your vendors have automated this for you, their PowerShell are probably going to PowerShell scripts might have to change. So I came up with some scripts to gather information. Actually, if you go out to the NCAS and look at that, I've got a collector script that gathers all the information that's associated with the NERC requirements. I augmented that. I have a DFIR script that will pull down information, all of the volatile information. So all of the processes and so forth associating with the listening ports to the specific processes. And I stole it all. I stole it all from Stack Overflow or from blog posts. Okay, everything that I wanted to do, I started asking my friends, what information am I forgetting to gather? And then they were like, oh, you need this. And so I was like, okay, how do I find that? And I went and Googled it. And then I did exactly what we just saw right there. That's my process. Run it. And then as soon as I get it running properly, I just copy it off. And I put it in the script. And now I can run it consistently every single time. And then somebody can tell me I did it wrong, and I can fix it. Right? There's some other things, standalone Windows hardening, which gathers information. And actually that makes modifications like changing SMBv1. You don't need it, turn it off. Okay? And there's a couple other things out there. So that's what I do. This is how I do it. This is not hard. Okay? There are way better things. Manient has way better scripts for gathering volatile information. So does Dragos. Okay? But if you're trying to gather information quickly, your teams can do this on your own. And that's my point. So, that's it. Any questions? Yes?
When you're out interacting with clients at different sites, what is the percentage of systems that are not capable of running PowerShell that you encounter?
So every environment that I've been in, and I've only been in a few, but pretty much all of them were Windows 7 and newer. And so typically there's some type of PowerShell in there. A lot of times it's PowerShell version 2, which is a part of the problem. You know, some of this information is actually hard to gather in PowerShell version 2. Actually, my recommendation is you shouldn't be using PowerShell version 2. You should uninstall that, and you should be using at least 3. And that's actually why I wrote the NCAS scripts, because it is compatible. All the information is from PowerShell version 3 on, and it will run on any PowerShell version from 3 on forward. So to answer your question, yeah, PowerShell, I found it in every single environment. I'm not saying that I won't go to an environment in the next couple weeks and find one without it. And then we'd have to figure out some other way to, you know, command shell scripts, but we can do that. I don't like doing it. I'd rather do it in PowerShell. Does that answer your question?
Fortunately, you have that available to you.
Exactly. But this is also why talking like this is important, and demonstrating if the capabilities aren't provided because of you have limitations within your operating systems and the capabilities, it doesn't mean that you can't do this. It just means that your team needs to look it up and take the time to actually do it. And while they're doing it, instead of just running each one of these commands as one-offs, they should be taking that information, putting it in batch scripts, saving it off so that it's repeatable. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? Real simple, you know. That's all I wanted. You know, this can be simple. There are automated solutions that are expensive. You can do it. You don't have to wait for that. Your teams can do it yourself. I really appreciate your time. It's time to get Viv back up here. We will talk about something much more ICS related than this. But I appreciate your time, and I thank you very much. Have a great time here.
Thank you for joining us for another ICS Village production. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Find us on icsvillage.com to become involved with our community.